Hello, Ujjwal.
हाँ, स्टार्ट कर
Yeah,
दूँ?
you can start now. Yeah.
ओके। Okay, so I'm starting the workshop. So now let us begin with dealing with missing values. So basically, first we'll cover the topic how we'll deal with the missing values. So first of all, the questions comes in mind like why the missing values are present. So there may be many reasons like people may hesitate to put down the information. Also, in most of the surveys, the informations are filled recklessly, and also the complete information may not be available, and there may be human errors. So these are the reasons why the missing values may be present. So there may be different types. Also, there may be different types of data that may be missing. Like the data may be categorical or numerical, that may be continuous or discrete. So some kind of data, some in some data set, the values are completely missing at random. This means that there is no absolute relationship between the data missing and any other values. Like basically, those missing data points are random subset of data. Like you cannot find any correlation between the missing values and the values which are present. So this is missing completely at random. And also sometimes you will get data when the missing values will not be at random. That is, there will be some relationship between the data missing and the other values present. So this is missing data not at random. So these are the different types of data that may be missing, and you have to identify by yourself. Like you have to analyze the data and see whether which kind of data is missing. So now let us see that now this is actually the code for driving for mounting the drive on Google on Colab. So I have mounted it. Now let us import pandas and numpy. So now firstly let us make an array that is np.array, and we'll consider a value as none. None is basically a same as np nan. So it is not a number basically. So let us do this, and basically in case of none, we get when we'll do sum of this array, then we'll get a undefined value. So basically none doesn't allows any operation on it. Like if you will perform any operation, addition, subtraction, or summation or maximum, you will always get an undefined value. So this is one of the problem with none, that you cannot perform any operation with it, though it may also not be very useful also. So this is one of the problem. Now let us define nan. Nan is another a missing numerical data which is of the type float. So let us consider an array np.array, and we have also taken a value as np.nan. So let us run this, and you can see like the data type is basically float. So this is np.nan is basically float, and these integers also get converted to float. That is basically like nan is basically a virus. It infects any other object it touches. Regardless of the operation, the result of arithmetic with nan will be another nan. So like here you can see 1 plus nan will be always be nan, and also 0 plus nan, 0 into nan will be nan. So anything you multiply, divide, add, or subtract with nan will always be a not a number. So this is with none we get undefined value, but in case of nan we are getting a value, but that is nan only. So that is of no use basically. And also if we do sum, minimum, or maximum, all the values as you can see, they all will be nan only. So this is, but if you want to ignore that nan value, so there is also a method in numpy that np.nan sum, like this basically ignores the nan value and gives the sum to you, and same goes for minimum and maximum, np.nan min and np.nan max. So basically it will help you to get the values by ignoring the nan values. So as you can see, it is the same array, but here we are getting values at 8, 1, and 4. So this is one of the good use case of how to avoid the nan values. Now basically nan and none values are used interchangeably in pandas. So let us consider a series. So this is the way in which we create series. PD is basically a pandas dot series. It creates a series, and here we have taken the four values: 1, np.nan, 2, and none. So basically, if we have any nan values, it will automatically convert all the other values to float. So here you can see the data type is float 64. So now this is also a way to create another series. Now here you can see that data type is int64 when we have created a series and we have assigned a data type int. But when we assign a nan value to the first one, that is x0 is equals to np.nan, everything basically upcast to float. So this is property of np.nan. Basically the other values are converted to float itself. So now let us consider a case of string. Like let us say there are various string and hello. Yes. So let us say there is a string and there is also np.nan values. So basically in case of this, the values will be object only. It will not change to float. So here you can see there is a graph also. There is a table where you can see floating type class. When there is a floating value, no change. When there is an object, also no change. Like you can see here, there were objects, so there was no change. When there is integer, there was a change. It basically changes to float. And when there is a boolean, it changes to object. So these are the properties. When you operate with nan, you keep in mind this. Like the data type may gets changed. So this is basically working on null values. Now let us say operating on null values. So there are various methods in which you can operate on null values. Like we can check whether it is null using dot is null. Is null basically gives you a boolean mask, like where the values will be null, it will provide you true, and where the values are not null, it will return you false. And same goes for not null. It is just opposite of is null, like where the values will be null, it will provide false, and where there are no null, it will provide true. So that is not null. And drop NA is basically it drops the nan values or none values. It does not keep the none value and returns a filtered version of data. So that is the property of drop NA. And fill NA, what it does, it basically fills the missing values. It basically is capable of filling the missing values, and that criteria depends on you, that you provide basically in the function. So now let us go to firstly how to detect the null values. So let us create a series, data equals to pd.series, and we have created this series. So let us first say like whether data is dot null v. So if we'll run this, we'll see for one it gives true. So for one was np.nan and it was a null value, so it gives true. And for 3 also it was a null value, so it gives true. And for the rest it gives false. And if you will check for not null, so let us say we want to find the data where there is not null value. So we do data and in bracket data dot not null. So what we'll get basically for 0 we'll get 1, and for 2 we'll get hello. So we are getting basically the first and the third 0th and the second index. So this is the property of not null. So in this way you can identify whether the values are null or not null. And they provide a boolean mask, like whether there when there is a null value, they provide you true and else false. Now let us say we want to drop some null values. So if we consider the same data and we use drop NA method, so it basically drops the null value. Like you can see here, no null values came. So this is method for dropping the null values in a series. Now let us consider a data frame. So let us say we created a data frame. You can create a data frame like this. So if we created a data frame, there are various null values. So let us first print the data frame. So yes, this is the data frame 1, 2, nan 3, 4, and 2, 5, 6. So basically we cannot drop single values from a data frame. So basically what it does, it is not capable of dropping each single value. Like you want to drop this value, you cannot drop this individually, like, or you have to apply some threshold. So there is basically some methods where in which you can drop the values. So first one is the default method df.drop_na. What it does, it basically drops all the rows in which any nan values are present. Like if we will run this method, so you can see in the 0th row there was a nan value, it drops it, and in the second row there was a nan value, so it drops it. Basically we are left with the first index 2, 3, and 5. So this is the property of drop, and by default it drops all the row which have any kind of nan values. Let us say you don't want to drop by the rows, you want to drop by columns, like the columns which contain any nan values, you don't want to drop them. So basically you provide a parameter that is x is equals to columns, and it will now start dropping by columns. So you can see it has dropped by column. Now so it has taken only the second column 2, 5, and 6, and the 0 and first columns were dropped. So this is again another way in which you can drop the values. But also there may be various reasons, means there may be various kinds in which you want to drop the values, like you do not want to drop all the values because there will be many data loss. So there are various thresholds or parameters in which you can drop the values. So let us say in the same data set we have just added another nan. So we have added a whole column of nans. Now we want to drop only those columns in which all the values are nan, like in this column, all the values are nan. So to drop that, first we will provide a parameter x is equals to columns, and second parameter will be how equals to all. How equals to all means we'll drop only those columns in which all the values are nan. So this is in this way you will drop the third column, and you are left with only 0 and first and second columns. So, and if you want to go more finer and in more details, so you can provide the threshold. So basically what does it threshold tells you? It basically lets you to specify a minimum number of null values for a row or a column. So basically like let us say if you provide that thresh equals to 3, so what it does, it basically in which row there are more than 3 values which are not null, it will keep that row, and rest rows will be dropped. So let us analyze this. So in the first row there are only 2 not null values, in the second rows there are 3 not null values, and in the third row there are 2 not null values. So basically what it does, it basically keeps the second row or the first index. It keeps the first index of the second row and drops the rest of them because the values that were not null were less than 3. So this is the way in which you can provide a threshold to it. So this is another way in which you can find control the drop any parameter, the drop any functions. So these are the ways. Now let us say you want to fill the nan values. So now let us create a data which is a pd.series. Now let us create a series using pd.series. So you can see here, firstly I have taken 1 and rest all values are nan. So let us run this. So first of all, we can also even fill the values with a single 0. So so you can use dot fill na 0, data dot fill na 0. So all the values will be filled 0. This is one of the easiest method. If you want to fill all the null values with a particular value, you can use data dot fill na and that particular value. It will provide you the nan values with that value. So now let us say you want to fill all the nan values with the just previous value of that row, of that column. So let us say here, before this 1 was there. So if you will run this forward fill method, so you can see for B it has provided 1, which was the value of A, and for C now B has become 1, so it will copy the value of B. Similarly D will copy the value of C, and similarly E will copy the value of D. So this is basically a forward fill method in which you will provide in which you will fill all the nan values with the previously filled row. So this is the way in which forward fill works, and similar goes for the backward fill. So now you can see here the last value is np.nan. So basically it will not consider any values. It will basically take all the nan values. It is propagating nan values, and we are only filling the na values. That's why 1 is not replaced. That's why 1 is not replaced, because we are only considering nan values. Those values are that are nan, we are copying their value from the next one. So 1 remains once, and all the values, all the rest values are nan. So this is basically a difference between the forward fill and backward fill. Forward fill basically copies the value of the previous element and propagates it, while the backward fill copies the previous of next element. Like D will copy the value of E and C will copy the value of D. So in this way the backward fill and forward fill works. And also for the data frame there are similar ways, but you have to define the axis for which axis you want to like replace the value. So let us consider the data. Like here there are a lot of non values. So we have taken the axis 0 and method is forward fill. So if we'll run this, we'll see that like here there was nan value, but it will copy the value of previous element. So nan becomes 2, and here there are no previous elements, so it will remain nan. And here all the values are nan, so it will also remain all remains nan. So this is basically the use of ffill and B fill. So this is the various ways in which you can fill the missing values. Now let us work in more detail. So I hope till now you don't have any doubts. If you have any doubts, you can ask anywhere you were not able to understand. If not, then we'll proceed forward. So let us move forward. So let us work in more detail. So basically what this code is doing, basically I have mounted my Google Drive, and this is basically the place where my data set is present, and I want to extract, I am extracting it to a folder named temp. So this is basically a code in which you can extract your data set. And so I will run this, and I have extracted it to temp. Then I'll read the data set from temp. So I have read the data set. So what are the various ways of handling missing values? So that were the simple things like fill NA was very simple, like forward fill or backward fill. But now let us see how can we manage with the missing values. So first one is deleting rows. So first let us consider all. Deleting rows, mean, median, mode replacement, assigning a unique category, creating a unique feature, predicting the missing values, or using algorithms which support missing values. So these are the 5 ways, or there may be more ways, but these are the 5 basic ways in which you can fill the or handle the missing values. So now let us comes to deleting the values, deleting rows. And this basically works when the particular column or feature has more than 70 or 75% of missing value. Basically, you don't want to lose the data. But if the feature or column contains a lot of missing value, more than 70-80%, then you can try of deleting that whole feature or whole column. So this is one of the basic method of deleting rows and one of the easiest method to get rid of nan values. So firstly, this is nothing but length, and in this way, this is basically what df dot is null. Where there is null, it will gives you a value, and we are basically summing it, and we are basically dividing it by total length. Like we are basically getting the percentage by this, like how many percentage of null values are present there. So if we'll run this, so we can see for different, like for passenger ID there are 0 missing values, for P class 0, for name 0, for age there are 20% missing values, and for cabin there are 70% missing values, and for body there are 91% missing values. So you can see for body and for cabin there are a lot of missing values. So you can just try to drop them. If no other method is coming to your mind, then you can drop them, or you can give it a try of dropping the body or cabin values. So let us say we have dropped. So how to drop? So basically for dropping any column, there is a method df.drop body. We are dropping body, and x is equals to 1. So what it does, it basically drops the body. So here you cannot see any body. It has dropped. And what the above method tells, it basically tells in place equals to true. So in place equals to true means like you are basically in that, like let us say if my yes. So let us create another. So now if I'll run the data set, so now the body is present. I have dropped it, but here we can see the body is present. So we use in place equals to true. If we do not want body as a parameter, then we can use in place equals to true. And when we will run this, we can see like, yeah, body is not present. So this is basically the use of in place equals to true. It does the operation with simultaneously, like it removes the body from the data set. So this is the way in which you can remove body from the data set. Now, what is the pros of removing, like deleting the whole row? So it may result in a highly robust or accurate model, like sometimes it may result. But basically, deleting a particular row with no information is better, since it does not have a high weightage. So you can remove the whole row or column if more missing values are present. Like if 90% of values are missing, then you can basically remove all the values. But what are the losses or cons? Cons is basically you get a loss of information and data. A lot of information and data is lost that you can manage the other way. So this is one of the laws, and also it works poorly if the percentage of missing value is high. Let us say, like if only 30% of missing, if there is only 30% of missing values, then it is of no use to remove the values. When there are more than 70 and 75%, then you can remove the missing values. Otherwise, you have to try other methods like mean, median, mode, and other methods to fill the values. So now let us come to mean, median, mode method. So when should we apply the mean, median, mode method? So basically, when the data is missing completely at random, then we can apply the mean, median, mode method. We can also try of replacing the nan values with the most frequent occurrence of the variables, like this is basically mode. So we can replace with mean, median, mode when the data is completely missing at random. So again, let us read a Titanic data set. And we are basically use columns. This is also an important feature. Use calls is basically used to consider only a particular columns. Like here we are only considering 3 columns: age, fair, and survived. So use calls is used for that only. So as you can see, for df.add we only got 3 columns: age, fair, and survived. So now let us consider the mean, like how many values are null. So for age there are 20%, for fair there is very less percentage of missing values, and for survived there is 0. So now let us see. This is a function. In this this is actually creating a function in Python. So basically you write a keyword diff, then this is a function name impute nan, then these are the parameters that you pass from the calling function, and this is basically the code for the function. So I will explain you this function, like what it is doing basically. Like let us say I'm calling from here impute nan. This is a data set. This is basically age that I want to impute, and with what I want to impute, I want to impute the median of the age. So I'll call the function. I go here and I'll see df. I will create a new variable, df variable, the variable plus median. Here variable is age, and I am adding median to it, that is age median, and I'll fill it with median of age. So I will show, you will get clear about it, like when yeah. So as you can see here, this is basically the age median. From here we created a new feature, and that is age median. And what we got in that, where there was a nan value, we got 28 in it. So this is the median of basically the age. So we replace the nan value with 28. So in this way you can replace the missing values with mean, median, mode. Here you can also apply mean, so that will give you mean, or you can apply mode, so it will basically give you mode. So in this way you can basically replace the missing values with mean, median, mode, and you can create a new feature, and afterward you can drop it. If there is no use of age, you can drop it and you can keep age median. So in this way you can create a new feature. And also let us see, like let us plot a graph, like how the age median is different from age, like how our the data set is changed. So here we are basically drawing a plot using matplotlib. So red one is basically the new feature that we have created, that is age median. This is basically the data set. This is density, the x-axis, and the y-axis, and the x-axis is basically the data. So here it is showing 28, it is around 25, 26, it is showing a high density. Basically 28 is our median, so we have filled a lot of values with 28. So here there is a high density, but previously here there was low density because there was no data such as 28. So basically the data set has changed a lot. Basically the data set has changed a lot due to filling with median. Basically if I try to print df age dot standard deviation and df age median dot standard deviation, you can see basically there is for age there is 14, and for age median there is 12. So as you can see also here, like the standard deviation for age median is less as compared to age. So this is something that gets changed if you try to replace with median, mean, or mode. So there will be some changes, but you have to basically consider best of all, like in which you are getting the least variance, or in which the output is best. And also if you want to like understand this whole graph, so like KD is basically kernel density estimation. So basically it is showing density versus the exist. These are the data and this is the density, like how frequent they are occurring. So KD is that and exist color red for age median we are changing the color to red, and this is basically used to get these age and age median. So these are the basically the codes that you can see by yourselves. So this is it. Now, what are the advantages and disadvantages of mean median mode imputation? So first of all, advantages are easy to implement, like it is very easy and faster way to obtain the complete data set. Yeah. So it is one of the faster way to obtain the complete data set if there are missing values. What are the disadvantages? So it basically changes the variance. As you can see here, the variance or standard deviation has changed. So that is one of the disadvantages. And what is another disadvantage is that it impacts correlation. Like there may be a correlation of age with other features. So it does not consider that. It basically fills all the value with mean, median, or mode. So it basically avoids correlation, any concept of correlation. So that may also occur. So these are the disadvantages. Now let us come to, now I hope all of you are understanding. If anybody has any doubt in between, you can ask or try to ask any doubt. So now let us go to creating new column, feature, or assigning new category. So again we are reading the same data set, and yeah, so here there was a cabin is present in the data set, and it has a lot of missing values as we have seen earlier also. So what we are doing here, we are basically creating a new feature, that is cabin null. We are creating a new feature, and how we are creating it, we are telling it like where the cabin is null, we are assigning it 1 and rest values are 0. Like whenever there is a nan value, like here cabin was nan, so we are cabin null takes the value of 1, and whenever it has some value not equals to null, so it will take a value 0. So this is the code for it, like np.where df.cabin is null, it assigns value 1, else it assigns a value 0. And when you will take a df cabin null.mean, so basically what it is giving, it is giving 77. So it basically means 77% of the values, like 77% of the values are null. So this shows, and it was something that we were getting above. So 77% values are null. Now this is basically nothing but head, as you can see here, like for cabin, and you can see like let us say 20. So for head you can also pass the parameter in it, like how many columns you want to see here, how many rows you want to see. So I have, now you can see like here cabin is present, so correspondingly the value becomes 0. Here also it is present, value 0, but here it is not nan value, so here it gets 1. So this is the way in which you can replace, so in which you can replace the in which you can basically add a new feature cabin null, and you can afterwards you can drop cabin because it is of no use now. So also 20 is basically the number of rows you want to see. Is the parameter in it. Now let us move on. So now let us see what is the correlation. Now, there must be some correlation between how many people survived, like the people survived in cabin null. So the people who were dead, mostly their cabin will be missing, because those people who have survived, they may know their cabin. So now if we do df.group by cabin survived cabin null.mean, so we can see for survived where there is 0. 0 means that they are dead, they are not living. So in those 88% values are the missing, 88% values are missing. That means they were not able to provide the cabin number, while those who survived, only 59% of the values are missing. So they were able to provide the values of their cabin. So there is basically a correlation. So here you can see like there is correlation between survived, and so you have to see these things, like if there is any correlation between cabin survived or anything else. So here there is some correlation, as you can see here. So if we also so let us move on. So we can also provide a new category, like those values that were missing, we can basically provide them with m. So df cabin dot fill any, that we can fill the none values with m also. So we have basically assigned a new category to it. So this will also work, but that was a better option maybe, like 10. And we have also seen the correlation, how it emerged out the correlation. For 0 88% values were missing, and for 1 only 59% values were missing. So now let us see what are the pros and cons. So pros are less possibility with an extra category, resulting in low variance. So variance will be low, like there may be not very much change in data set after one hot encoding. Also, list item negates the loss of data by adding a unique category. Yeah, no data is being lost. So these are the pros of adding a new feature or category. And what are the cons? Adds another feature to the model while encoding, which may result in poor performance. So if there are a lot of features, then it may result in a poor performance. So these are the cons also. There are some cons and there are some pros. Now this is also very important. So this is basically we will use some algorithm to predict the missing values. Basically, let us say we have some features in which there are no missing values are present. So we'll try to use those features to predict the values of the feature in which the values are missing. Like we will be using linear regression to replace the null values in the feature age using other available features. One can experiment with different algorithms and check which gives the best accuracy. Yes, you can also check with logistic regression or any other regression. Like there are very much other models which will be teaching you later on, so you can use those models. So now let us move forward. So let us say, so first we'll import linear regression. So you can see from sklearn.linear model, import linear regression, and we have created an object like LR equals to linear regression. Now we'll create a new data set, df with null, and we'll use only these all columns. And if we'll run this, so we'll get a new feature. Yeah, here you can see the data set. There is passenger ID, P class, survived, SIBSP, sparse, fair, age. So here we'll use these all values, passenger ID, P class, survived, this and this, to predict the missing values for age. Now let us see how we'll use this. So first we'll create a data set without null values. So we'll drop all the null values, and also we'll reset the index. We can use dot reset index. It is basically used to reset the index. And now we can see, if we see the data set without null values, we can see there are only 675 rows, and with null there were 850 rows. So we have not dropped the null values. So here there is no null values present. So now let us take a training data set like train dfx, and what we are taking, this is basically the code for taking the first six these all columns. We are taking these columns, and train dfy is basically we are taking the age. Basically what we are trying to use these or columns or these features to predict age, and we are basically fitting linear regression on it. As you can see, we are fitting lr.fit train dfx and train dfi. So basically we are using the columns to predict age. The y is basically age, and we are using a linear regression to fit on it. So basically we'll run this, and no df with null age. Yeah, so okay, this is basically we are filling the null values for, I will tell you afterwards. Like, yes, so now let us see what is df with null. So df with null is basically our this original data set, 850 rows. And what I have done, all the missing values of passenger class, P class, survived, this and this, I have used forward fill method, and I have filled it. And we are trying to basically predict for age, and we are not considering these all. So let us fill these values randomly and we will try to predict for age. Like you can see, I have not filled any age value and later on I have added age. That's why. And only the age contains none value, because let us say if you want to df with null dot is null dot sum do. So you can see only age has null values and none other class has any null values. So now let us say, now this is the main part. We want to predict for the age. So age predicted, let us say we have created a new thing and pd.data frame and lr.predict. LR is basically our linear regression and we'll predict a test df. What is test df? Test df is basically this df with null. Test df is what? Test df is df with null dot ilog. First 6 columns we are considering for test df. So if we'll run this, we can see. So now we get age predicted. What is age? These are the age that are predicted. This is this is what linear regression gave us. Like for first it gave us 189, for second it gave us 244 and so on. So it is the different age values which we got by linear regression, by using linear regression. And now we are filling what? We are filling the age values. Df with null dot age dot fill na. We are filling the age value with age predicted. That what we have predicted now we are filling with it, and we are replacing true means we are doing it simultaneously, like the changes will be reflected. So if we'll do this, and now if we'll now see the null values, the df with null, we'll see all the values are filled. Like you can see here, previously it was null, as you can see above. If we okay, now there's okay, now let us say is null dot sum. So if we'll do this, so you can see for age there are no null values. So basically what we have done, we have basically filled all the null values, like you can see. And how we have filled df with null dot age dot fill na, where there is none values, only that will fill. We'll leave the last value. Like here it was 38, so we have left 38 because let you can see here there is 244 and here is 38, because this is the previous value. We have not filled this value, but we have filled the nan values. 189 here is present and also here 189 is present. So we are only filling the nan values with what we have got by a linear regression, and we have done it simultaneously, like the changes will be reflected. So you can see here, like, so what are the pros? So the pros are the imputing the missing value may result in an improvement. Yeah, there may be some improvement in the model. Like you have basically filled all the data set and you have also applied some model to predict it. You are not just guessing randomly, you are using some models. So that is a very good use case. And also sometimes it may perform poorly, or outliers may also come. Like you can see here a large value is coming. Like for each it is coming 189. So it is basically an outlier, a very large value. So you have to deal with it. You have to try another model. You have to try some better model. So this is the some loss of using the models. Now coming to using algorithms which support missing values. So this is something we'll run in upcoming workshops. Like there are various methods, like KNN is also used to detect the missing values, and it helps in finding the missing values and filling them. Also there is random forest classifier and other methods which we will use to deal with missing values. So this will learn in the upcoming workshops. Now there are some pros, like it does by itself, and also but it is a very time consuming process. And also there are various distance functions like Euclidean and Manhattan which do not yield a robust result. So there are some pros and cons that we will learn later on in the upcoming workshops. So also now I have attached various references. These are the very good references, like I have already told you, for Krishnayak also. So these are very good references where you can go and see. And I have also attached data set. Like for the Titanic data set, I have attached it, so you can download it from here. We'll share all of this. So now I want to say, if anybody has any doubt, you can ask. Anybody having any doubt in this, please try to ask your doubts. Okay. I hope nobody has any doubt.
Yeah,
So,
if anyone has any doubt, then do ask.
yeah,
Right now.
I am moving very fast because there are a lot of things to tell you. But if you have any doubt, you can ask anytime. because we have lot of topics to cover. That is why I'm moving very fast. So this is the end of handling missing values. Now let us come to encoding categorical features. So there
Ujjwal,
are
one
various.
minute.
Yeah,
I
okay.
want to speak something. Yeah, so hello everyone. Actually, we are having almost 200 plus participants, and even though only 20 to 30% of them are taking the workshop seriously. So, as a spoiler, I want to let you know that we will be taking a quiz in this workshop. It may happen 10 minutes later, half an hour later, or even at the end of the workshop. So I request you all to tell your friends to join ASAP, as you all know that the quiz will have a weightage in the final margins. And yeah, and I also want to let you know that don't try to be over smart. Like a friend may call you and say that a quiz is happening, join the teams fast, and no such thing will be tolerated. So I
And
request all the friends to join as soon as possible.
please try to join the workshops. Like these will be very important for your internship, upcoming internships also. That this will be used as your projects. So try to join the workshops and tell your friends also to join. So
Yeah,
okay,
so if
yeah.
you think that watching the recording will be well fit for you, it may not be, as having a live discussion with the coordinators will be much more helpful, and it will really help you in clearing your doubts instead of just watching the recording and then DMing us our doubts. Like it is also like we welcome your doubts, but also at the same place, we also want you to be serious with the workshops that we are conducting. Usually, you
Oh,
can continue.
yeah. So okay, now let us begin with like how we will deal with categorical feature. Like basically, the machine will not be able to understand the categories, different categories. It basically deals with the numerical values. So how you will try to understand the how you will convert the categorical feature and how you will deal with them. Now let us come to that. So encoding categorical feature. First one is one hot encoding. So let us know this is basic thing. Firstly, so again, I am basically this is all I have shown you the code. Let us read the data set now. Yeah. So use calls as I have told you. Basically, it uses some particular columns. As you can see, I am using here only the sex column. Like okay. So okay. There may become some syntax error. Like, it's clear now. Syntax. There is some syntax fit. I'll just confirm the syntax. Use calls. Use.
Six six should be in third bracket. I mean square bracket.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. So now you can see use calls. I'm using the basically the sex only the as a column. So you can see there is female, male, female. So how you'll deal with how the machines would deal with the female, male, and female. So basically what we do is one hot encoding. So basically we will try to convert female to 0 and male to 1. So what you can do, how you can do that? So basically you can use pd.getDummies. So what it tries to do, it basically tries to give you two new columns, that is sex male, and if we remove draw first equals to true, you will get basically two columns, sex female and sex male. So where there is a female, it will give you one, and where there is male, it will give you one. Like for the first index it is giving you one, and for female it is giving you one. So this is a way in which you can use in which you can try pd.getDummies. Now I was using draw first equals to true because we don't need sex female, because if we have one column we can already know the result of other. If it is 0, then sex female would be 1. That is why we basically drop one column to avoid large pre-processing and poor performances. So we can basically drop one of the columns. So we used drop first equals to true. So this is it. Now let us say basically df equals to pd. Now again we are using a use called embarked. So now let us say how many categories are there in embarked. So if we'll dot unique, then there is q, s, c, and n. So there are 4 different categories. So what you will do, we'll basically drop the na values, and we'll basically do the same thing for like embarked q. Where there is q, we are getting as 1, and where there is s, we are getting 0. When both are 0, like when we'll, let us say we do 10. No, here also like. So yeah, here both of them are 0. So basically the embarked C is basically 1. So we can drop the first column, like we do not need it, because if we know the output of the embarked Q and embarked S, we can automatically get embarked C. So this is one of the advantage for dropping the first column. Now let us come like, now let us say there are many categories. So this is another data. I am using Mercedes-Benz.csv. So as you can see head, like there are various many categories like x0, x1, x2, x3, x4, x5, x6. So basically firstly you have to analyze the data. Like we can see how many unique values are there in each of the columns. So for x0 there are 47 unique values, for x1 there are 27, and so on. So what we'll try to do, let us only work on x1, and you can see rest by, you can do rest by yourself. So when we'll work on x1, what basically we try to do is we basically try to take the top 10 values in frequencies. Like if we short the like df.x1.value counts, first we'll count the values, then we'll sort the values in ascending order. Like ascending equals to false, here the ascending is false, like we want those values which have the maximum occurrence. So here you can see that A has the maximum occurrence of 833, and so on. So instead of creating, like let us say it has 27 categories. So if you will create 27 new columns, it will be very hectic for machine also. So basically what you do is you basically take top 10 values which have the maximum frequency. You can do this by this thing, and you try to encode them. Like basically you can assign them 1, 2, 3, 4 like that, and all the rest categories, all the remaining categories, the remaining 17 categories, you can assign them a new value 11. Assign 11 to all of the remaining values, and assign 1, 2, 3 to these values. So in this way you can basically deal with it. Now let us see how we do it in code. So we'll basically create a list, and what we'll do, we'll basically, what we have done here, we have done here also, but we have created a list now. So you can see the list is A, S, B, L, V. So this is basically this one. Now what we will do, now basically what we are doing, we are basically one hot encoding, like the same thing that I have told you previously. Like when there is a category, when there is a df x1 is present, df x1 equals to category. Like let us say df category is A, and df x1 is also A, then we'll put 1, else we'll put 0. Like let us say here only, like let us say here v comes, v is present in df x1 is basically v. So here we have put 1 values, and all the here we have put 0 values. So when there is a v value, we'll put 1 in front of it, and rest will put 0. So basically what we are doing, we are taking only the top 10 values. So this is another huge advantage, as you do not have to take all the 27 values. If you have taken all the 27 values, new 27 columns would have been created. That would be a lot of work for the machines. So you can take the top 10 values which are most frequency, which are having most frequency, and you can just use them. So this is all about one hot encoding, and it is very important for the categorical features. Now let us say ordinal number encoding, like will assign ranks. So this is nothing but it tells you this is basically a code for data, and this you do not need to learn anything. You can just copy paste from internet itself. So it basically tells you the days and date. So what I have created by using all this, what I am basically, these are the days, and what I am doing, I am creating a data frame out of day, and I am assigning that column name equals to day, that is data.columns equals to days. So basically I am creating a new data frame. As you can see, here is a new data frame, and how we got it, basically I am just using this thing, and I am converting it into a frame. So these are just simple code. Now let us say I just want to add a new variable to it, like I want to add a weekday. Like now let us say I want to add weekday, so data of weekday equals to data of day dot dt dot day name. These are the codes. Like this basically adds another feature, that is weekday. Like today it is Sunday, yesterday it was Saturday. It basically have taken the data of previous 15 days. So this is today. So now let us say if we run, yeah, so we got it. Now what we are assigning, we are basically assigning values to each of them. Like Monday comes first, Tuesday comes second, Wednesday comes third, Thursday fourth, and so on, Sunday seventh. So basically we created a dictionary. So we created, now after making a dictionary, what we are doing, this is very important. So we are now creating a new column, that is week ordinal. We are creating a new column, and what we are assigning, data weekday, that is this is a weekday dot map dictionary. Like when it is Sunday, we are mapping the values of the dictionary. Like when it is Sunday, it will assign 7, like you can see here, Sunday 7, Saturday 6, Friday 5, and so on. So basically map is a function for mapping the values. Like from Friday it maps 5, for Saturday it maps 6. So in this way you can just get a new feature, and this is basically ordinal. Basically you are providing a rank to each of the days. Like for Monday you are providing 1, for Sunday 7. So this is basically ordinal encoding, like you are providing some rank using some dictionary and mapping functions. Now coming to count or frequency encoding, like so what is count or frequency encoding? In this, basically you replace the values with the frequency, like how many times they have occurred, you replace them with that. We have again used a new data set, like this is something, the data set of people, like where they live, whether they are male, female, how many children they have, and married or not married. So now we are taking some particular column. So this is the way in which you can take some columns and you can assign train set equals to train set columns. We are only taking 1, 3rd, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 13 column. And we are now we are assigning the columns names, employment, degree. These are the names of the columns. And now let us say how many labels are there. So we just want to see that how basically what we are taking here, employment, degree, and these all things, these are basically something that is categorical data. We don't want to take the numerical data now, so we are taking that one. And we want to see like how many unique labels each of them consider. Like employment, there are 9 different labels. For degree there are 16 labels, and so on. For country there are 42 labels. So now let us work for country only. So now let us work for, like, yeah, so we are creating a country map. So what is this train set country? We are taking a country column, we are counting values, like which country has occurred how many times, and we are converting it to a dictionary. Now let us see what it gives. So basically if we'll just add this code and we'll just print the country map. Let's see, yeah. So see, it has basically given Canada 121, China 25, Cuba 95, and so on. So this is basically providing each country a value, like how many times they have occurred. So this is basically in which we can create a, we are basically trying to create a new column. Now let us say we are creating a new column. So what we are doing, train set country equals to train set country dot map country maps. So basically if you want to replace within the country only, so what you can do, you can replace country dot map country map. Like if the country was Mexico, so it will replace with 643, and if it was Peru, it will replace with 31. If it was Vietnam, it will replace with 67. So previously you can see like country was United States. Now what it shows, it shows 29170. Like here you can see 29170. So this is basically we are replacing the value of the country with the number of times they have occurred. So this is called as frequency labeling, like frequency encoding, count of frequency encoding. So this is it. Like what are the advantages? Easy to use, like you can just write a 1 line or 2 line code and you can get it. And yeah, also it is not increasing feature space. In case of one-hot encoding, you were creating a lot of new columns, but in case of this, no new columns are created. So this is one of the advantages. For this advantages, it will provide same weight if the frequencies are same. Yeah, if let us say for two countries, let us say Thailand or Taiwan, if both of them occurs in same number of times, then there is no difference between Taiwan and Thailand in our new country or new data set. So this is one of the disadvantages, like we are merging some kind of data set. That is not we want. We want the data set to be unique. So this is a disadvantages. Now again comes the target guided ordinal coding. Like we can replace the probability by 0, like we can replace it by 0 1. Like let us take a Titanic data set only, and we are using columns like cabin and survived. So we are basically, what we are doing, we are filling the cabin value, like which are nan values, we are filling them with missing. So this is something. Now what we are doing, this is basically we are converting this column to string type, and we are taking the 0th character. This you will see in a minute. Like you can see, like for missing we have only taken M, and for if the cabin was present, there is CD, that is the first letter of cabin name. So this is something. Now let us say if we only take the unique number of letters, so there were M, C, D, and these only 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 8 9 only 9 unique categories are present, and only 9 unique categories are present. Let us take the mean. So this is the mean, and I will tell you why we are taking the mean. Basically what we will do, I will tell you in advance only. Like we'll try to sort the values in the order of their mean. Like if the mean corresponding to A or B is more, then we will assign them a higher index, because that is something more important to us as compared to something like T, which has only 0 mean. Like there is no one with initial value T that has been survived. So we will assign A7 and T0 because there is no importance to it. So what we are doing is same. We are shorting the values and we are providing an index. So like let us say T has been provided with index 0, M is with 1, G is with 2, and similarly E with 9 or 8. So this is the way in which we basically provide index to it. So here is also a code, 1-line code, like k is to E we are mapping, and for I comma k, like if we map for k comma I, then it will be like now it is coming A4, and now if we'll do this, it will come like it will be just opposite. 0 0 0 will be mapped to T, but we want T should be mapped to 0. For that we do I comma k, like this. And enumerate basically it makes a dictionary, like it basically helps us to map enumerate function. So now A has been assigned a value 4, B has been assigned a value 7, C 3, and so on. So what we are doing now, we are just creating a new column, cabin ordinal labels. So if like M is, yeah, like let us say for M we have provided a value 1. So you can see here M is 1 because it is less important to us. For M it was only 0.28, the mean was only 0.28, so it is less important because most of the people have been died. But for B it is 0.73, so we provide a high value, like B you can see 7, here you can see like 6. For D it is more important to us, so we have provided 6, and for C it is in between, so we provided a 3. So in this way you can do some, in this way you can judge the data, like whether how we have to provide the importance to a particular category. Like here we have provided using survived criteria. So this is the way in which you can provide labels 6 3 1 and so on. In a similar way, mean encoding is also there. This is the last one. Basically in this we take out the mean and we assign the values, we assign a new column and we will use them as mean. So it is basically same as previous one, like instead of replacing with 1 2 3 we replace with the mean. for m the mean is 0.28, for let us say if I'll do 20, so yeah, for C the mean is 0.58, for D the mean is 0.70. So we are creating a new column, mean ordinal encode, and we are just providing a new mean values to it. Like in the same way, here we have provided 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and here we are providing some floating point values, 0.28, 0.58, and so on. So in this way we are providing mean values. Now this is the end, and there are various references I have attached to it: GitHub, type of categorical data encoding, and also dataset I have also attached, so you can see it. We will share it with you. So now this is the end of basically the encoding categorical features, and this one was handling missing features. So if anyone has any doubt, you can ask. Please try to ask your doubts. Don't sit like if you are, and if you are not understanding, then please ask, or else I will hand over to Aman. Akshat or Aman, you can continue.
Yeah, Manak will continue first. So, guys, if you have any doubt till now, you can ask. Maybe you will feel the pace a bit high, but you will understand at least when you go through the notebook when we will share it. So don't worry about it. But still, if you have any doubts till now, you can ask us.
Is the screen visible? Hello.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. So whenever you will collect data, there will be some outliers. Okay. So what are outliers? That in this example, for this example, you can see here that there are scores of 5 players. Okay, and among them, player 3 has scored 10. Okay, so let's imagine a class. Okay, and everyone have got percentages. Now in that class, almost everyone is brilliant. Okay, there is uh, one student who is not that much brilliant, and he has got 4 marks. Okay, so every other students have got marks above 80%, and he has got marks 60%. Okay, now you can't actually predict the class result. That let's say you randomly select 5 students from that class, and you are trying to predict that what can be their percentage. So in that, you can't actually take that 60% marks in consideration. Okay, because so in that case, that mark 60% marks will be an outlier. Okay, so in your data, outliers generally generate whenever if there is some mistaken if there is some mistake while collecting the data, or any typing mistake or anything like that. Okay, so outliers generally reduce your performance, model performance. So for getting better performance, you need to remove those outliers. Okay, so no, so there are so in this example, you have detected the outlier easily. That player 3, everyone has 300 plus score, and player 3 has scored 10. So player 3 is outlier. But generally, data sets are not that much simple. Generally, data sets are of rows, lakhs and lakhs of rows, and there are columns, more than 20 columns, even that is also very large. So in that case, you can't actually find out outliers very easily, but just by seeing them. So in that case, you have to use some methods. So here are some methods using which you can find outliers. So first method is box plot. Okay, so box plot uses the IQR method for IQR method, and it plots a box. And in box plot, uh, I will come to this part now. Just before that, so here I have loaded the Boston dataset. Boston data, Boston house pricing data set, and let's see box plot. Okay, so there is a column DIS. So I am seeing its box plot. So this is the box plot of the DIS column. Okay, so here you can see there are three values which are here and other values are here. So box plot, what it does is that the points which are very close, okay, it collects them and it plots a box around them. Okay, so the box denotes that these points are very closer. Okay, and these points which are outside this, yes. So first of all, in box plot there are one box and two whiskers. Okay, so these are the whiskers, these lines that are here. Okay, these are the whiskers. So whatever points that are outside the whiskers, okay, that will be the outlier. So here you can see that there are three outliers. You can't actually um, extract it on the data set, but in this plot you can see it. Okay, so how box plot is made? This is so the method is IQR method. Okay, now what is IQR method? So you can see these plot. See this plot. Okay, so if you have attended the previous assignment solution explaining meet, okay, there we have there Aman has explained the Gaussian distribution. Okay, so this is the distribution of the data. Okay, this plot is the distribution of the data, and Q1 and here Q1 and Q3 are quartiles. Okay, we have plotted, we have found some points that are these are quartiles. Okay, Q1 and Q2, and this is a median. Okay, so the difference, so the difference between Q1 and Q3 is the IQR. So IQR is actually the middle region of the data set distribution. Okay, it's the middle region, and whatever data lies outside these Q1 minus 1.5 multiplied by IQR. So this is the IQR score. Okay, this is the IQR score, and whatever point lies outside this, okay, means this region or this region, those are the outliers. Okay, so here you can see this is a perfect normal distribution. Okay, so in this perfect normal distribution, in this region there is almost no points. Okay, so the outliers are very less. So if your data is not a perfect normal distribution, if that has outliers, then here will be some points. Okay, so these points will be outliers. So in box plot is, so here is the corresponding box plot for this distribution. So the so this is the box and these are the whiskers. Okay, so that's why whatever point the whiskers actually that are defined according to this distribution. Okay, so whatever points are outside the whiskers, those will be the outliers. That's what the box plot says. Okay, so this is one method, and another method is the scatter plot. Okay, now scatter plot, you can in scatter plot you can also you can see scatter plot can be used for multivariate outlier detection also. Okay, so multivariate outlier detection is what? So there is two columns, indus and tax. Okay, there is two columns, indus and tax. So there is a pattern. Okay, how indus and tax are related. Okay, but there is one data where indus and tax are not related like that. Like here you can see indus is below 10, and here you can see the tax is almost above 200. Okay, but there can be a data where indus is 200 and tax is below 10. So that is outlier. Okay, so that thing will not satisfy this relation. Okay, so here what we are doing, we have taken the indus. We have taken the indus as x-axis and tax as the y-axis. and plotted the points. Okay. Now see these points, these are here. Okay. So these points which are very closer. Okay. So these points are actually saying that they are well satisfying the relation between index and tax. Okay. But this point, which is far from all these, okay, this is totally separated from all these. So it means that it is not satisfying the relation. Okay. So in this way also, you can also detect outliers. Okay. But multivariate outliers. So you can ask that why can't we use 3 columns? So in 3 columns, you need 3 dimensions. Okay. We can use Matplotlib 3D plot. Okay. Obviously 4 dimension, you can't plot 4 dimension. No. So generally, we use the 2 dimensional scatter plot for detecting that which 2 columns have outliers. Okay. The next one is the Z score. Okay. So Z score is here is the formula. This is the element. This is the mean of the distribution, and this is the standard deviation. Okay. And so what in Z score, what we do is that uh, we find the Z score, and after that we define a region. Okay. We define an interval. Okay. and and whatever is outside the interval, we consider that as having outliers. Okay. So here is the data. Okay. Boston DF. Okay. And here's the data Boston DF, and we have found we have calculated the Z score. Okay. Please notice here that we have already done the absolute. Okay. So now if we want to choose, so if we are choosing a limit of -3 to 3, so in this case we have to now choose 0 to 3. Okay. So don't be confused in that. So we have found taken the absolute of the Z score. Okay. And this is the Z score. Okay. So now we have set the threshold as 3. Okay. Means the region is -3 to 3. Okay. And now where the Z is greater than 3 means these are actually giving the rows and columns. Okay. The first array, this one. Okay. This one is giving the rows, and this one is giving the columns of the corresponding elements which are having Z score more than 3. मतलब outside -3 to 3, outside the interval -3 to 3. So you can all see that the first element, that is 55 and 1, column 1 and row 55. So its Z score is 3.37. Okay. You can also take your interval according to you, whatever you like. Okay. Now this is the Z score, and this is IQR. Okay. So this is the IQR score. IQR score, I have already described that what is the IQR score. So whatever, so just refer from here. Okay. First of all, first you refer from here. So this is a distribution. Now, first of all, we have to find the quartile points. Okay. We have to find the quartiles. If we find the quartiles, then we can find the IQR. Okay. And then we have to set this region quartile minus 1.5 multiplied by IQR, and quartile plus quartile 3 plus 1.5 multiplied by IQR. Okay. So we'll get this region, and whatever is outside that data will be outlier. Okay. And so here, first of all, we have found the quartile. Quartile is the quartile 1. This is the 25 percentile of the data. Okay. You don't have to uh, worry about how to find the quantile. So this is the 25 percentile of of this data set, and quantile 3. Okay. Quantile 3 is 75 percentage of this data set. Okay. And after that, this is the IQR score as we have seen there, that is Q3 minus Q1, and this is the IQR score of all the columns. Okay, so you can see here that somewhere there is 3, 12, 12, 0, 0, 49, 3, 20, 387, 2, 20, 10, like this. Okay, now let's see what is the range. Okay, so what is this giving? See, for tax, okay, tax, the IQR is 387. Okay, and for tax, the lower for tax, the lower limit is minus 301 and upper limit is 1246. Okay, so whatever tax which is outside this limit, okay, that tax and that element will be outlier. Okay, so here you can see we have printed that here where is false. Okay, false denotes that that is not outside the limit. Okay, false means that is okay, that is not outlier. So now these are all the methods of detecting outliers. Now how to remove outliers. So we have already found the Z score. Then according to the Z score, we have to just sample out the rows from the data set. So this is how we sample out the rows, and uh, so here I have printed the Boston the actual dataset shape and the dataset shape after sampling out the rows. So you can see here it is 506, 13, and here is 415, 13. Okay, so around 90 plus rows has been removed. Okay, so this is how we have removed the outliers by Z score, and you can also use the IQR score like the Z score. Okay, so this is so I have already said that those where is false, that is not the outlier. Okay, so here we have sampled out the rows um, using that condition. Okay, and see here the what is the new dataset shape 274, 13. Okay, now there is another thing you need to notice. Okay, so the dataset, the total dataset shape is 506. Okay, and when you are removing the outliers, it has become 274. Okay, so you don't need, yes, your outliers affect your model performance. Okay, but if your data becomes almost half, okay, that will also affect your model performance. Okay, so in this case, if I have to choose one method to remove outliers, I will choose the Z score. Okay, it's not removing, it's not shortening the whole data set. Okay, but here the dataset is almost getting halved. So this thing you should not choose. Okay, this thing you have to keep in mind. So another thing you can also use the robust scaler. This is
Yeah.
was scaling with. Hello.
Can I ask something?
Yeah.
In the IQR, we are removing so many data. So is it because we are using IQR or we are using .NE?
I guess it's because of IQR.
Okay, Bhaiya. And what .NE and .all does?
This is This is just selecting all the axes. Okay, so if you see the dimension, okay, this is if you see the dimension, that is here 506,13. Okay, so instead of when you say that dot any or dot all axis equals to 1, okay, so you are selecting all the everything of axis 1, means in this is 13. Okay, 13 columns, when you are selecting all the columns. Okay, that's what you are doing.
Okay.
So this is a robust scaler. You can also scale the data for reducing outlet. That will be explained later. Up to you, Aman.
या तो स्क्रीन शेयर बंद कर सकता है, मैं खुद एक्सप्लेन कर दूंगा. ओके फाइन. Okay, so you will be able to see my screen.
Yeah.
Okay, fine. So now comes the feature scaling part. Like you all understand outliers, handling missing values, how to remove outliers, categorical encoding, all these stuffs. But the one of the most like these all are important, and one another concept you need to understand is feature scaling. So you may ask, what is feature scaling, why it is necessary, what are the different types of scaling you will encounter in your data science like journey, or and finally like how the scaling different from each other, when to use which scaling. These all things we will see in this notebook. So number one, what is feature scaling? Like in simple terms, if you not understand vector space, then it's fine, but it simply means that you will transform a transform a set of features into another coordinate axis. Like you will see x comma y is a coordinate space, but 2x comma 2y is also a coordinate space. So in that coordinate space, your original points will get almost halved. So if you want to represent 1 comma 2 in one, then it will be 0.5 comma 1 in another. So these types are called feature scaling. And let me elaborate you more with these figures. So suppose this first figure will tell you that these points are very far distributed, but after applying a type of scaling, these all will shrink down to nearby the origin. We will tell you later how this will happen, but as a whole, this can be the scenario. Another example is of this Gaussian distribution, this normal distribution, where the original distribution have the variance sigma square and the mean mu, but after scaling this one, it comes down to with mean 0 and standard deviation 1. This is also a type of scaling which we will generally operate with normal distributions. Now the same second type of figure can be applied to our data sets as well. These all are different types of Gaussians, but after scaling, these all will comes down to Gaussians having almost same mean and variances. So these will apply, and one such image is also there. This is also a type of scalar called as robust scalar, which we will use. So here its performance can be like shown from this figure. Now a question comes, like we will see all this scaling, but why we directly use the features which we have in datasets? So there can be multiple reasons for it. Number one is the effect of outliers. So as Manak finished its saying with the robust scalar. So suppose if you have a data set which corresponds to a, like which will signify, like there is the IQR interpretation given by Manak that it will makes the data set almost half. So sometimes you need to deal with outliers very smartly. Like it's not that they will in reality represent outlier. Maybe it will represent something else. You need to dig into the data to see what that mean. Is it actually an outlier or it is something else? So if you don't want to dig directly, then firstly you will try to scale your data set. scale your features. Maybe so this first figure will illustrate what I'm saying, that suppose this is a feature which is mostly concentrated around here, but some part of it is spreading across the right hand side. So one way is to drop this, but looking at this portion of the data set, it is very large in number, so you can scale it down, and what it will result it in a less smaller area of outlier. So here you will see only a very smaller portion of outlier, and most of the data set is now concentrated. So sometimes scaling can beneficial, because scaling can be of two types: non-linear scaling and linear scaling. So linear scaling may not be helpful in removing outliers, but non-linear scaling will definitely boost your uh, chances of adjusting the outliers. Now comes the box plots interpretation. Like you see in this figure, first figure, before scaling, the data set will represent the outlier like this. But after scaling, you will see the outlier like this, but it is mostly scattered, means the concentrated part will go inside, and only the portion like here is now reflecting it in this big, like in the zoomed version. So scaling, number one, use affects the outliers, maybe helps in handling them. Number two, in fastening the optimization, like this is not valid for all type of models. Like models you will mean like which will help you in predicting, so not applicable for everyone, only those which apply gradient descent based approaches like linear regression, logistic regressions, and neural networks, but not for tree based models, which will you will study later in the upcoming workshops. So for gradient based approaches, the scaling is very necessary. You will already saw that most of the, like fitting a, before fitting a model, you will apply standard scalar type of thing as scaling. That is necessary because gradient, you will see from first figure that when the feature have different type of maximum or minimum values, you will see like they have different scales, then gradient descent take a long time to approach converge to the minima. But when the scaling is same for all the features, which is almost same for all the features, then this loss curve becomes a type of spherical, or you can say a ellipse, spherical apart from ellipse. So this will help the gradient descent to converge fastly, because it will not take this random haphazard steps. It will directly converge to the minima. Another interpretation is from this. You will see from this figure what I'm saying. This is the ellipse one and this is the circular. After transforming or after scaling the features, it will represent a spherical, or for 2D it is a circle. So what are the different types of scaling? Now the question comes down to this. There are a bunch of scaling methods in the data science community now, but I am explaining you only three. Rest you will explore by yourselves. I will share the link and you will refer resources towards data science and other stuffs for learning about other scales. So number one is standard scalar. This is the most widely used scalar which we will encounter for any machine learning model. What it does, it applies a Gaussian concept, that z score x minus mu by sigma. What it does is that it scales every feature, like this is your original value of the feature. It will apply a mean of the column, like suppose a feature has a mean mu and variance sigma. Then what it will does is that it will scale every value of that feature. Like in the feature, every value is scaled by the mu and sigma factor, which will result in a value z. So you will see that these three curves have different mu's and sigmas, but after scaling, these all comes down to this same mu, because almost all comes down to having a 0 or 1 standard scaling value. Like as I already showed up, that after mu and sigma transformation, all Gaussians comes to 0 and 1. This is the effect of standard scalar. What it does is that scales the features based on mu and sigmas. This, so all features may have almost similar scales now. Now comes the min-max scalar. Min-max scalar is depicted by this formula, that you will get intuition already that what it does. It does the taking the maximum and minimum of that feature and then uses that as scaling to scale that feature. I will share the one code to describe this because I don't found any relevant photo to explain it. So this is the code that I am using for min-max scaling example. You will need to import sklearn. Now you all need to learn you all need to get used to the sklearn library because it is the any questions? If you have any question, then you can unmute and ask in between. I will stop and let you speak. Okay. So first you will need to import sklearn library, numpy, matplotlib, and this is the command. Like I already described that from this is the command you need to import standard scalar in sklearn. From sklearn.preprocessing import standard scalar. It does it for you. It imports the standard scalar. Similarly, from sklearn.preprocessing import min-max scalar. So I'm generating an arbitrary data A. This is that data set. Its scale is from 0 to 1. Sorry, like I will generate a different data set which will get you better. Like I am doing np.arrange minus 50 to 50. So it will generate a data set, reshape it, and this is the data set minus 50 to 50. So what min-max scalar does? I will apply the min-max scalar dot fit transform. It will fit the original data set and then transform it to create a new array of B. So this is the B array, this is the A array. So you will see that here the value ranges from minus 50 to 50, but here it ranges from 0 to 1. So one thing you will need to notice that it will scales the value between 0 and 1 as depicted from this figure. Like it will scale the value from 0 and to 1. So what it does is that the maximum value you can see is the 50 and minus 50 is minimum value. So it will apply the concept of x plus 50, like minus 50 upon me x minus minimum upon maximum minus minimum. This is the formula you will apply and then it will result in 0 to 1 scale. Okay. So this is the example of min-max scaling. Now comes these two are, you can say, a type of linear scalars. It will scales the value linearly. But now comes a non-linear scalar, which is called robust scalar. sklearn.preprocessing import robust. It is a type of non-linear scalar. What it does is that it takes quartile into action. As already explained by Maina, Q1 and Q3 are the 25th and 75th percentile. Like median will be depicted as 50 percentile. Median is the half part of your data set. Similarly, Q1 is the 25th part and Q3 is the 75th part. So it will consider quartile into action because sometimes it will happen that your data set is skewed. So as like you see from this picture, you see that your most of the data is around the median. So your min-max scalar will not take into account, but it will greatly affect your Q3 score. Q3 will be gone somewhere here. So what it does is that it takes not the median, maximum, minimum or something. It will take more wider range into account, that is Q3 and Q1, to account for the scaling factor. And after applying, you will see that this is the unscaled data. This is the data set after standard scaling. So you will see we need to classify red and blue ones when the data set is red, when it is blue. But after standard scaling, these points didn't get separated. You will see that we will not able to predict when what will occur. But after random scalar, we got a pretty decent separation to classify when red and when blue will occur. So these sometimes non-linear scaling will affect your data set more, and sometimes it is what you need for your data. So before scaling, so in summary, before scaling is this. After robust scalar, you will see a smooth similar scaling. After standard scaling, this will happen, and min-max scaling does not account for the it will not consider the separation like these outliers into account. It will not consider this. it will just scale it down. So outlier effect will be there as it is. But these two, not standard scaling also not take that much into account, but only slighter outliers. But robust scaling is far better than those two for outliers. So how they are different from each other? So the few pointers from my side is that when you will see your feature is a type of Gaussian, like your feature is of this type, your feature is of these types, then standard scaling you will go directly. But if the amount of outlier is big, then robust scaler can be your first choice. Out of these three, I am not considering all the scalars present in the datasets community. Okay? And third one is the min-max scaler. Like when to use min-max is generally used when there is no some data is not Gaussian and no such outliers present. Then min-max you can apply. It is the most like naive scaler you can apply for your dataset, but it is sometimes beneficial. So it is not a hardcore rule when to apply when to apply which scaler in which situation. So it's just it's a more of an art than a science. You need to try, see the performance, then reiterate it. So these how you need to do the things. Now comes the dataset splitting part. Okay. Dataset splitting. All things done. Okay. All things done. You've scaled your factor, removed the outlier, everything done about your dataset. Now your dataset is completely fine. There more things come in future workshops, so you need to do in between. But let's come down to one step above of model prediction is the dataset splitting. Now your dataset is well prepared for loading into model. Then you need to do one thing. That is dataset splitting. Suppose I am training a model. Like I am training a model. I have the access to training data on which I have to train, and one is the testing data set which we will provide you. You will have to submit that your result on that test data, and you will not have access to the results of that test data. But how will you know that your model is overfitting or underfitting? You already know the concept from second workshop about overfitting, underfitting. So if your model is either underfitting or overfitting, it will not perform well on the test data set. So how you will verify? So as a part of this, you need to perform dataset splitting. You have only access to the training dataset labels. So what you will need to do is that you can do two things. Firstly is known as the train test split. What do you mean by this? sklearn will have a library called train test split. Okay. This train test split. I am not running this library. You will, I want that you will run this by on your own when we will share this notebook. So because now we are not a spoon feeder for you. You need to do it by yourself as well. So I'm just explaining the concepts. Number one is that train test split of sklearn. What it does, it will cut out a portion of training data set. Like suppose your training data set is assumed to be 100%, then you will provide a test size fraction. Like here it is mentioned test size, but this data is generally known as validation data, val data. We will call data as val data. So what do we mean by val data is that validation data will be generally used to validate your performance. Like after training it on training data set, the portion of the original training, like suppose here it is mentioned 25. So we will divide the original training data set into two parts, 75% and 25%. First 75% is actually used by you for training your model, and then that trained model is validated on that 25% data. And if your training data set error and your validation data set error are like satisfying, like coming in very close regions, like coming in very close points, then we will say that your data set is not overfitting or either underfitting. If you will see that your data set is very good on training but not performing well on validation, then there can be two reasons, underfitting or overfitting, which you will need to see by yourselves. If the training data set is error is very low and validation error is high, it means overfitting. If both of the error is very high, it means underfitting. And if both are in a decent range, both error is decreasing, then it will depict that your model is good enough for now for this data set. So this is how you need to do the train test split of your sklearn. By importing the train test split, you will give your original data set, the target of the data set, and then the percentage you will need to split into train and validation. So this is the one point, but here is a drawback of this. This type of splitting will ensure a loss in your training data. So your model will get only a part of the original training data set. So obviously your performance will hamper. So as a remedy of this, there is another method known as k-fold splitting. I'm just mentioning the term you so that you will explore it by yourself. That is known as k-fold cross validation. This method you will Google. I'm not sharing anything about this. This method you need to see by yourself. I'm just sharing the terminology. K-fold cross validation. It is also a very good method to divide your data set and avoid overfitting on your test data set or underfitting. So everyone just try to go and search about this term after this workshop. So that's all from our side for this about the content of this workshop. So if you have any query, then just ask about all the concepts that you have encountered till now. There are a lot of content in the workshop
Can you
today.
explain once more the how scaling the data set can fasten the optimization?
Sure. Okay. So let me go back to that part.
Okay,
So
wait, before you continue, Aman, should I stop the recording now?
yeah, sure. Yeah, because now we will having a quiz at only after this. Sure.